Hello, good evening. Prince Andrew has told the BBC he categorically denies with Virginia Roberts.
Buckingham Palace has finally broken its silence, and the world is reeling from the shock. After years of rumors, speculation, and hushed whispers, a DNA test has delivered undeniable proof that has shaken the monarchy at its very core. Prince Andrew's long-guarded secret has been confirmed, forcing the palace to release a final statement that could forever change the royal family's legacy. The revelation is not only scandalous, but heartbreaking, raising questions of loyalty, betrayal, and truth. So, what exactly did the palace confirm, and why now? Shocking secret unveiled. Buckingham Palace has finally spoken, and the world is reeling. In what is being described as one of the most shocking royal revelations in decades, the palace has issued a final, historic statement following the DNA confirmation of Prince Andrew's most guarded secret. What was once whispered as rumor is now an undeniable truth, and the royal family finds itself standing at the edge of a storm that could change its image forever. According to insiders with deep knowledge of royal affairs, the monarchy is under mounting pressure. Not only because of this scandal, but also because of Prince William's sweeping vision to reshape the future of the royal household. His reform plans reportedly include overhauling the royal finances, tightening the use of taxpayer funds, and most strikingly, stripping both titles and financial support from family members judged unfit to represent the crown. In light of this, Prince Andrew's situation could not be more precarious. The Duke of York is said to be enraged, caught in the glare of fresh controversy at a time when every move of King Charles and Prince William is under global scrutiny. Their decision about Andrew's future role, or possible removal from royal life altogether, will undoubtedly stun the nation once announced. Yet the most jaw-dropping moment came when Buckingham Palace made an unprecedented admission. Prince Andrew is indeed the biological father of a previously unknown individual, confirmed beyond question through DNA testing. This disclosure has shaken the monarchy to its very core. For decades, the palace was a fortress of silence, carefully shielding scandals from the public eye. But now, after relentless speculation, legal challenges, and mounting pressure, that wall of secrecy has cracked open. A rumor once dismissed as tabloid gossip has become an undeniable reality. For Prince Andrew, already tarnished by his association with disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein and his disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, this revelation is catastrophic. At 64, his reputation, long in tatters, has now been dealt perhaps its final blow. The monarchy, facing its gravest test of legitimacy in a generation, must now confront a painful truth in the full light of public judgment. The question is no longer whether Andrew can return to royal duties. It is whether the monarchy itself can withstand the shock of this seismic confession. Will this hidden heir simply stain Andrew's name, or could it alter the monarchy's future forever? A secret confirmed. For one individual, life had always carried a shadow, a single question that refused to fade. Who is my real father? Decades passed with that uncertainty pressing on them. Rumors whispered in hushed tones, yet certainty always remained just out of reach. Now, at long last, that question has been answered. The results of a DNA test have confirmed beyond any doubt that this person, long a private citizen, is indeed the biological child of Prince Andrew. Unlike the dazzling drama that usually surrounds royal revelations, this individual never chased fame, nor did they wish to bask in the glow of royal pageantry. No balcony appearances, no lavish banquets. Their wish was far simpler, almost painfully human: the truth. For years, they sought only confirmation that their instincts and lifelong suspicions were real. And now, at last, that truth has arrived. Reports say the person's identity remains heavily protected. They have no desire for titles or public recognition, only privacy and respect as they process the knowledge that has defined and reshaped their life. But behind closed doors, the results have ended decades of torment, replacing uncertainty with clarity. Those familiar with the proceedings say the DNA test left no room for interpretation. The findings were mathematically conclusive. This is no longer gossip, no longer a rumor whispered at the edges of royal society. It is science, undeniable and final. The revelation now rests at the feet of King Charles III, presenting him with an impossible challenge. This is not merely a private family affair. It is a direct strike at the very reputation and stability of the Windsor dynasty. Historians and constitutional experts are already dissecting the fallout. What does this mean for questions of inheritance, for the meaning of titles, for the definition of royalty in the 21st century? Prince Andrew, already disgraced and stripped of his roles and honors, now faces what may be the last fracture between himself and the monarchy. With the existence of a once-hidden child confirmed, even his remaining ties could soon be cut away forever. What began as faint whispers in obscure forums and tabloid speculation has exploded into undeniable truth. DNA has transformed rumor into reality, and now the world waits, asking the question that could reshape royal history. Will this hidden heir remain in the shadows, or could their existence alter the very future of the monarchy itself? From whispers to headlines. In the years after Prince Andrew stepped back from public life, faint rumors began to gather and circle around him more tightly. The way he lost favor was sudden and dramatic, and that fall left room for suspicion. His links to Jeffrey Epstein and his awkward BBC Newsnight interview had already damaged his reputation, so people were ready to believe that worse secrets might be hidden. Over the last 2 years, those murmurs gained momentum. Online amateur investigators began collecting snippets, grainy photos from the 1980s, loose memories of his naval days, and odd remarks from former palace staff. Piece by piece, a story took shape, tales of a brief affair, followed by a quiet arrangement that kept a child away from royal life. What began as scattered gossip slowly became a rough timeline that many found believable. At first, the mainstream press stayed careful, unwilling to publish unproven claims. But as online talk spread, reporters could no longer ignore it. Articles appeared that asked questions rather than made accusations. Headline like, "The Duke's Secret History," and "Is a Royal Secret About to be Revealed?" These cautious pieces still fanned public interest, turning private whispers into public discussion. Buckingham Palace replied with the usual line, "No comment." Normally, a shield of dignity, in this case the silence felt heavy. To many observers, the lack of denial seemed less like decorum and more like an unspoken admission that something serious might be hidden. Dr. Anna Whitelock, a respected royal historian, explained the deeper risk such claims pose. She noted that the monarchy rests on clear lines of ancestry and legitimacy. Questions about bloodline are not petty gossip. They touch the very core of royal authority. When lineage is questioned, the institution's foundation shakes. As rumors evolved into reports and reports became official inquiries, the story emerged from online forums into the public eye. Hushed talk in corridors and speculative forum posts had grown into a scandal that demanded answers. For Prince Andrew, already isolated and stripped of honors, this development threatened to cut the last ties he had to the royal world. This revelation could reshape public trust and revive debates about the monarchy. And now, the public waits with a single, urgent question. Will this unfold as another sad chapter in a tarnished reputation, or as the revelation that finally tests the crown itself? When silence became dangerous. For generations, Buckingham Palace relied on its golden rule: never complain, never explain. But in the modern age of social media, this once powerful strategy has turned into a dangerous liability. Today, silence is no longer seen as restraint. It is read as concealment. And when the palace remained mute, speculation rushed in to fill the void. What began as a whisper grew steadily, until, about 8 months ago, it reached a turning point. The rumor transformed into something far more serious, a legal challenge. No longer confined to internet forums or tabloid gossip, the shadows gave way to a single clear voice. This was not the voice of scandal seekers or sensational headlines. It came through the structured authority of the courts. An individual had stepped forward, claiming to be Prince Andrew's biological child, and formally requested that the Duke of York submit to a DNA test. At that moment, the palace's silence became deafening. Contrary to public expectation, the claimant was not a fame-hungry opportunist. He was Alexander Campbell, a 42-year-old architect from Edinburgh. Raised by a single mother, Campbell had built a respectable career far from the spotlight of aristocracy. Those who knew him described him as intelligent, private, and deeply professional. According to both court filings and close friends, his quest was not driven by wealth or royal titles, but by something far more personal: the need to know the truth about his identity. For decades, his mother avoided answering questions about his father. It wasn't until her final days 2 years earlier that she confessed. According to her, she and Prince Andrew had shared a brief but meaningful relationship in the early 1980s, before his marriage to Sarah Ferguson. When she discovered she was pregnant, a discreet arrangement was made. In exchange for silence, she received modest financial support, ensuring her child could grow up quietly, away from royal scrutiny. That confession on her deathbed became the catalyst for Campbell's legal pursuit. His lawyers at Thompson & Finch first attempted private contact with Andrew's representatives. Their efforts, however, were met with silence. Left with no other path, they filed a lawsuit grounded in the human right to know one's paternity. Friends close to Campbell explained his struggle. This was not ambition, it was closure. Imagine, they said, living over 40 years with a missing piece of your life story. The fear of being wrong was heavy, but the fear of being right was just as overwhelming. When the media uncovered the case, they scoured his past for scandal, but found none. Instead, they revealed a portrait of a man who valued privacy and dignity. His refusal to play to the press only strengthened the public perception that his motives were sincere. And in that quiet determination, his claim gained the weight of truth, forcing the monarchy to face questions it could no longer ignore. But now, the world is left wondering, if this claim proves undeniable, what will it mean for the very future of the royal family? The palace's dilemma: a monarchy under siege. The official request for Prince Andrew to undergo a DNA test struck Buckingham Palace like lightning. For a monarchy built on tradition and secrecy, this was uncharted ground. Never before had the institution been forced to confront such a direct challenge, where the very bloodline of the Windsors was questioned so openly. Prince Andrew, already disgraced, was a damaged figure. Stripped of his public duties, military honors, and charitable patronages, he had become what insiders called a liability. Under King Charles III's leadership, the monarchy had been working tirelessly to rebuild, presenting itself as modern, responsible, and slimmed down to restore trust. Yet all of that careful work now hung in the balance. This scandal was unlike any other. It wasn't about money, nor about a careless remark on a foreign trip. It was about legacy, blood, truth, and betrayal. The possibility of an undisclosed child threatened to stain the Windsor name permanently and shake the very foundation of royal legitimacy. Behind palace walls, the sense of crisis was unmistakable. According to insiders, emergency meetings were called repeatedly. Around the table sat King Charles, Prince William, top legal advisors, and senior courtiers from the Lord Chamberlain's office. Their task was both simple and impossible. How should the monarchy respond? Refusing the DNA test would be seen worldwide as an admission of guilt, a silent confirmation of the darkest suspicions. Yet agreeing to it meant surrendering control of the narrative and opening the door to a truth that could prove devastating. Valentine Lowe, a veteran royal reporter, described the situation as immense, noting the monarchy's constant tug-of-war between protecting itself and preserving public trust. At the center of this storm stood Prince Andrew himself. His first reaction was reportedly furious. He dismissed the request as a gross invasion of privacy and branded it another smear on his already broken reputation. But the walls were closing in. Both King Charles and senior lawyers pressed him relentlessly, warning that fighting the request in court would be far more damaging than submitting quietly to the test. The longer he resisted, the worse the fallout would be. Finally, under immense pressure, Andrew gave way. But the agreement came with conditions as strict as those of a high-security operation. The DNA test would be conducted under layers of secrecy, with an unbroken chain of custody that could withstand global scrutiny. Every detail would be managed to ensure results were unquestionable, no matter what they revealed. It was a reluctant gamble, a choice made not out of confidence, but desperation. And within the palace, one chilling truth settled in. Once the results were known, nothing could ever be the same again. But here's the question. The world is still asking, when that envelope was finally opened, did it hold the truth that could bring the monarchy to its knees? The science of certainty. Inside the DNA test. When the question of royal bloodline is at stake, there can be no room for error. That is why the collection and testing of Prince Andrew's DNA were carried out in conditions as controlled and secretive as a state security mission. To prevent leaks to Britain's ever-watchful press, the samples were sent not to a London lab, but to the prestigious Sterling Genetics Institute in Geneva, Switzerland. This was no ordinary clinic. It was a world-renowned laboratory chosen for three key reasons: its independence, its global reputation for excellence, and its distance from the relentless gaze of the UK media. The process of gathering the samples was rehearsed and carefully staged. Nothing was left to chance. At one of the royal residences, under the watch of palace security, Prince Andrew provided his DNA. Present in the room were an independent medical officer, one of Alexander Campbell's attorneys, and Andrew's own legal counsel. Three witnesses ensuring there could be no allegations of tampering or coercion. Every detail was documented, sealed, and locked away immediately. Meanwhile, in Edinburgh, Alexander Campbell underwent the same procedure. His sample was taken under identical scrutiny, witnessed and sealed with equal care. Both sets of samples were then handed over to a secure diplomatic courier, whose journey to Geneva was tracked minute by minute. The meticulous chain of custody ensured there was no possibility of substitution or contamination. Once they arrived at Stirling, the samples were subjected to the gold standard of paternity testing, short tandem repeat STR analysis. This advanced technique examines specific regions of DNA made up of repeating patterns. Because every person inherits half of their markers from their mother and the other half from their father, comparing these markers can confirm or disprove biological relationships with extraordinary precision. One geneticist, though not involved in this particular case, explained the method simply. In a standard paternity test, we examine around 21 STR markers. If the child is biologically related, those paternal markers must line up. If every marker matches, the probability of paternity exceeds 99.99%. That figure, 99.99%, is the scientific equivalent of certainty. For Buckingham Palace, however, it was not just a number. It was a looming truth, waiting to be revealed, one that could either silence the storm forever or unleash a scandal that would echo through the monarchy for generations. But what exactly did the results reveal? And would the truth finally confirm the rumors that had haunted the House of Windsor for decades? The moment of truth. For all legal and practical purposes, the results were to be treated as absolute proof. Inside the Swiss laboratory, the technicians knew the gravity of what they were handling. Each member of the team was bound by strict, legally enforceable, non-disclosure agreements. They weren't simply processing anonymous samples in a sterile room with white walls. They were holding evidence that could reshape the history of the British monarchy. The atmosphere in the lab was heavy, almost sacred. Computers hummed quietly as they decoded strands of DNA, stripping away centuries of royal mystique and reducing lineage to lines of raw data. When the calculations were complete, the results were checked and cross-verified by a second team to ensure there could be no mistake. The truth, once confirmed, was beyond dispute. The report was handled with the highest level of security. No emails, no uploads, no electronic trail. Instead, a single hard copy was printed, signed by the laboratory's director, and sealed in a tamper-proof envelope. That envelope, though plain and understated, carried more weight than any royal decree. Within it lay a verdict capable of shaking not only a family, but the foundation of a nation's monarchy. The document was flown back to London under diplomatic protection. Upon arrival, It was handed directly to a small circle of royal legal advisors and a representative of the court. What that envelope contained was not just medical data. It was the fate of Prince Andrew's legacy and a chapter that would define the House of Windsor for generations. At St. James's Palace, the opening of the package took place in a sealed room. Present were the King's private secretary, Andrew's chief legal counsel, and an impartial court officer. Silence hung over the chamber as the envelope was broken and the single sheet unfolded. One participant later described the atmosphere as eerily still, as though the room itself understood the significance of what was being read. The report spoke with cold precision. The STR analysis had found a match between Prince Andrew and Alexander Campbell, establishing paternity with 99.999% certainty. The verdict was undeniable. There was no ambiguity, no loophole, no escape. What the world had whispered for decades had now been confirmed in ink and science. But with the truth finally exposed, one question loomed. Would the palace bury the revelation or allow history to be rewritten before the eyes of the public? Rumor turns into reality. Whispers had long haunted the palace, but now rumor had hardened into fact. Alexander Campbell's legal team received the official disclosure, a document stamped with authority and impossible to dismiss. Buckingham Palace was given less than 24 hours to respond before the truth spilled into the world. Insiders knew that silence was no longer an option. Within hours, the information would leak. Through the night, the palace's crisis communications team worked frantically. In an atmosphere of panic and sleepless urgency, drafts were written and discarded. Voices clashed over strategy, and every word was weighed like a ticking bomb. By the next evening at precisely 6 p.m., the carefully crafted statement was released. It was only 2 lines long, but its impact was nuclear. All parties have obtained and received the court-ordered DNA analysis results. The investigation found a biological link between the Duke of York and Alexander Campbell. The effect was immediate. Internet traffic exploded, and within minutes the phrase "biological link" was trending globally. News channels cut into live programming, anchors announcing with astonishment, "Prince Andrew's secret son confirmed." Outside Buckingham Palace, swelling crowds formed. Curious citizens, indignant critics, and stunned tourists gathering to witness history. Many voiced their anger, not just at the revelation, but at what they saw as years of deception. One woman told the BBC, her voice trembling with conviction, "We all knew something was being hidden. The cover-up is the worst part of it all." The next morning, the Duke of York's spokesperson finally addressed the matter. His words, however, landed like ice. "I accept the findings of the DNA testing recently conducted. This is a private issue that concerns the family, and I will be dealing with it privately with the assistance of all involved. No further comments will be made." Instead of calming the storm, the statement enraged the public. The phrase "private issue" was ridiculed, seen as cold, detached, and void of any humanity. Critics condemned Andrew for failing to acknowledge Alexander Campbell not just as evidence, but as his child. Public relations specialist Mark Borkowski summarized the damage. "This was a catastrophic misjudgment. People weren't asking for legalese. They wanted a father, a human response." By retreating behind palace walls and sterile language, Prince Andrew confirmed his critics' view of him: pompous, indifferent, and out of touch. A legacy once fragile was now shattered, its future uncertain, perhaps irreparable. By retreating behind palace walls and sterile language, Prince Andrew confirmed his critics' view of him: pompous, indifferent, and out of touch. A legacy once fragile was now shattered, its future uncertain, perhaps irreparable. But the real question remains: what happens next? Will the monarchy close ranks to shield one of its most controversial members? Or will this revelation ignite a reckoning that even centuries of tradition cannot withstand? Fallout of a scandal that shook the crown. Within mere days of the DNA confirmation, the consequences arrived with breathtaking speed and ferocity. For Prince Andrew, whose reputation was already in tatters, this revelation proved to be the final and most devastating blow. Across Britain, petitions surged, with hundreds of thousands demanding he be stripped of his last remaining honor, the title of Duke of York. Politicians, commentators, and even senior civic leaders openly called for his removal from the line of succession, a demand that would have been unthinkable only a decade ago. Inside palace walls, the atmosphere was said to be tense, furious, and deeply unsettled. King Charles, insiders reported, was both heartbroken and furious. After years of carefully attempting to reshape the monarchy into a modern, steady institution, his brother's scandal had shattered that fragile progress. Prince William, meanwhile, was described as incandescent with rage, convinced that this revelation inflicted damage upon the monarchy that could never be undone, damage that he, as the future king, would be forced to bear. For Alexander Campbell, however, the outcome brought quiet vindication. After decades of uncertainty, he finally had the truth. His goal had never been titles, wealth, or power. It was simply closure. Now, with the truth public, Campbell and his family asked only for privacy as they adjusted to this life-altering discovery. Yet privacy, as history shows, is rarely granted once royal blood is involved. Legal experts began dissecting the ramifications almost immediately. The Royal Marriages Act and laws of primogeniture clearly deny illegitimate children any royal titles or claims in the succession. Campbell, by law, would never be a prince. Yet, lawyers noted that his case for a portion of Prince Andrew's personal estate could be strong. Still, as one expert remarked, the legal questions were fascinating but secondary. What mattered more were the moral and institutional ones. What happens when modern science forces centuries-old traditions to face undeniable truths? The scandal was soon compared to Edward VIII's abdication and the explosive divorce of Charles and Diana. But many argued this was different, no matter of love or duty, but of deception, secrecy, and science. This time, there was no ambiguity. DNA had spoken, and it could not be refuted. As the dust settles, the monarchy faces a treacherous path forward. A once-hidden son stands as a living reminder of what the palace could not bury. Prince Andrew is disgraced, exiled in all but name. But the lingering question remains: can the monarchy weather this storm, or will this scandal become the wound that never heals? Shadows behind the crown. To understand why this statement shattered the monarchy, we must peel back layers of a story long hidden, one that began with whispers Andrew never wanted the world to hear. For decades, rumors drifted through palace corridors and late-night tabloids, whispers of a secret past. These weren't baseless stories, they were smoke from a fire, carefully concealed by those sworn to protect the crown. Insiders recall how Andrew's reckless behavior often fueled gossip. While the public saw a smiling prince, those closest whispered of late-night encounters, unexplained absences, and an arrogance that pushed limits. Instead of exposure, he was shielded. Courtiers intervened swiftly, calls were made, stories pulled, reporters reminded of their duty. What could have been headlines vanished into silence. Even Andrew's friends hinted at another life, spoken only behind closed doors, relationships hidden from cameras, meetings never reported, secrets that could have changed everything. Each time, the palace acted with ruthless precision, burying truths before they surfaced. It wasn't only Andrew's reputation at risk, it was the monarchy's. Protecting the crown justified deception, but that culture planted seeds of public doubt. People noticed the gaps, the sudden disappearances of stories. Suspicion grew like ivy across the monarchy's walls. What else were they hiding? Each silence gave Andrew's secrets greater weight. Then whispers became investigations. Beneath the glittering facade of royal life lay a forbidden affair Andrew thought would remain buried. But secrets thrive in silence, and this one was destined to explode. And there you have it, the royal secret no one saw coming. But what do you think? Will this revelation forever scar the monarchy, or begin a new chapter? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe.